She flinched on the first shot, missed the second. Laughter rippled behind her like wind through dry grass. Sarcastic claps, whispers of rookie. But she didn't walk away. She adjusted her stance, slowed her breath. And then the next 10 shots were thunder, precise, unshaken, unstoppable. When the final score popped up, no one moved. Not even the sergeant. Because the numbers didn't lie. She hadn't just recovered. She'd shattered a record no one thought she'd even come close to. From which part of the world are you watching this incredible transformation today? If you believe that champions are forged in moments of doubt, consider subscribing for more stories that prove failure is often just the beginning of greatness. The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete firing line at Fort Bragg as Alpha Company assembled for their quarterly marksmanship qualification. At 0700 hours, 38 soldiers stood in formation behind the 300-meter range, their digital camouflage uniforms already showing dark patches of perspiration despite the cool North Carolina air. The autumn breeze carried the scent of pine needles and gun oil, familiar aromas that marked another day of weapons training at one of the Army's premier training installations. Sergeant First Class Michael Torres surveyed his soldiers with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent 12 years developing marksmen from raw recruits. His weathered face, marked by multiple deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq, showed no expression as he noted the subtle dynamics within the group. The experienced soldiers clustered near the front, their body language radiating confidence born of proven performance under pressure. The newer personnel positioned themselves toward the back, their nervous energy betraying uncertainty about measuring up to standards set by combat veterans. Today's qualification shoots for record, Torres announced, his voice carrying across the formation with authority earned through years of leading soldiers in combat and training environments. Your scores become part of your permanent military record and influence promotion recommendations. More importantly, your marksmanship ability could determine mission success and survival when we deploy to Afghanistan next spring. Among the soldiers listening to Torres's briefing stood Private First Class Maria Santos, 22 years old, and completing her first year of active duty service. At 5 feet 5 inches, she was smaller than most of her male counterparts, but her determined expression and meticulous attention to equipment preparation suggested someone who compensated for physical disadvantages through dedication and systematic preparation. Santos had enlisted directly from college, abandoning a comfortable career path in accounting to pursue military service for reasons she'd never successfully explained to family members who couldn't understand her decision. Her performance during infantry training had been adequate but unremarkable. Acceptable physical fitness scores, competent tactical knowledge, and inconsistent shooting during practice sessions that ranged from surprisingly good to frustratingly poor. Santos called Specialist Rodriguez from his position beside her in formation. "You ready for this? I heard they're using the new computerized scoring system that displays results in real time." She nodded without enthusiasm, her stomach tight with anxiety about performing under observation. Unlike practice sessions where individual struggles remained relatively private, qualification shoots became public demonstrations of competence or incompetence. Her shooting during training had been maddeningly inconsistent, some days producing scores that impressed instructors, other days resulting in performances that barely met minimum standards. "First relay, move to the firing line," Torres ordered, consulting his clipboard for the day's shooting schedule. "Santos, you're at position 12. Ensure your equipment is properly configured before beginning your qualification attempt." Santos walked toward her assigned firing position with measured steps, carrying the M4 carbine that had become as familiar as any tool she'd ever used. The weapon felt comfortable in her hands, its weight and balance representing hundreds of hours of practice during basic training and advanced individual training. But familiarity with equipment didn't automatically translate to consistent performance under the pressure of formal evaluation. Position 12 placed Santos near the center of the firing line, a location that provided optimal visibility for soldiers waiting their turn and for the coaching staff responsible for range safety and instruction. She arranged her equipment with methodical precision, magazine pouches positioned for easy access, shooting sling adjusted for proper support, protective gear configured to allow unrestricted movement while providing necessary safety protection. Relay 1, Assume the prone supported position. Came the range control announcement over the public address system. Load and lock one 30-round magazine. You will fire 20 rounds in 2 stages. 10 rounds slow fire precision at 300 meters, followed by 10 rounds rapid fire at the same distance. Santos lowered herself to the ground behind the concrete firing point, her body settling into the prone position with practiced efficiency developed through months of repetitive training. Her left elbow found solid contact with the ground, her right elbow positioned to provide support without creating muscle tension, and her cheeks settled against the rifle stock with consistent pressure that ensured repeatable sight alignment. The 300-meter targets appeared clearly through her rifle's optical sight, black silhouettes against white backing that required precise shot placement to achieve qualifying scores. Santos had struggled with precision shooting during training, her tendency toward anxiety affecting her breathing control and trigger management when shooting under observation by instructors and peers. "Shooters, you may commence firing when ready," announced the range control officer. Santos aligned her crosshairs with the target center, her breathing settling into the controlled rhythm that preceded serious shooting. She applied steady pressure to the trigger, feeling the familiar resistance that preceded the firing pin's release. But at the moment of ignition, instead of maintaining proper sight alignment, Santos flinched involuntarily, jerking the rifle off target and sending her first shot wide of the scoring area. Behind the firing line, she heard the sound that every soldier dreaded during qualification attempts, quiet laughter that greeted obvious misses. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she realized that her opening shot had likely missed the target entirely, starting her qualification with a 0 score that would make achieving a passing total extremely difficult. "Steady down, Santos," called Torres from his position behind the firing line, his voice carrying professional encouragement rather than criticism. "You've got 19 shots remaining. Make each one count." Santos cycled her weapon's bolt to chamber the second round, forcing herself to focus on technical fundamentals rather than the social pressure of public performance. She re-established her sight picture, controlled her breathing pattern, and applied trigger pressure with deliberate concentration. But anxiety about her first shot's failure affected her second attempt, causing her to rush the firing sequence and shoot before achieving proper sight alignment. The second shot impacted low and outside the target's scoring rings, earning another 0 that deepened her embarrassment and virtually eliminated any chance of achieving a qualifying score. More laughter rippled through the soldiers waiting behind the firing line, accompanied by whispered comments that Santos could hear despite her position 30 meters away. "Rookie mistake," someone muttered loud enough to carry to her position. "Maybe she should have stayed in the finance corps," came another voice, drawing additional quiet amusement from soldiers who found entertainment in observing struggles they hoped to avoid experiencing themselves. The sarcastic applause started then, slow, deliberate clapping that mocked her performance while drawing additional attention to her failures. Santos felt her face burning with humiliation as the sound spread through the group of observing soldiers, their mockery creating psychological pressure that threatened to destroy any possibility of successful shooting on her remaining attempts. "Knock it off back there," Torres snapped, his voice carrying the authority that immediately silenced the commentary. "Santos, take your time and execute proper fundamentals. Block out everything except sight alignment and trigger control." Santos forced herself to pause before attempting her third shot, drawing on techniques she'd learned during civilian shooting instruction before enlisting in the Army. She closed her eyes briefly, using controlled breathing to manage her anxiety while visualizing successful shot placement rather than dwelling on her previous failures. The whispers and occasional chuckles continued behind her, but she began filtering them out, focusing instead on mechanical aspects of marksmanship that she could control through proper technique. "Remember what Dad taught you," she whispered to herself, recalling coaching from her father, who'd been a competitive shooter before his military service. "Fundamentals first. Sight picture, breathing, trigger squeeze. Everything else is just distraction." When Santos reopened her eyes and settled into her sight picture, something fundamental had shifted in her approach to the shooting challenge. The target appeared clearer through her optic, her rifle felt more stable in her shooting position, and the pressure of observation had transformed from paralyzing anxiety into focused determination to demonstrate her actual capabilities. Her third shot broke cleanly, the rifle recoiling straight back without disturbing her sight alignment. Through her scope, Santos could see the bullet impact in the target's 8 ring. Not perfect, but a significant improvement that suggested she was beginning to establish proper shooting rhythm. The whispers behind her diminished slightly as soldiers noticed the improved shot placement. The fourth shot followed the same controlled sequence, Santos's breathing steady and her trigger control smooth and consistent. The impact fell in the 9 ring, closer to target center, earning a respectable score that began restoring her confidence while demonstrating that her early struggles didn't reflect her true shooting capability. By her 5th shot, Santos had established the mechanical precision that characterized competent marksmanship. Her shooting position felt stable and comfortable, her sight alignment remained consistent from shot to shot, and her trigger control had achieved the smooth, straight-back compression that produced accurate fire. The bullet struck the target's 10 ring, earning near maximum points and beginning to capture the attention of soldiers who had been expecting continued poor performance. Much better, Torres acknowledged, his voice carrying professional approval rather than surprise. Maintain that exact same approach for your remaining shots. The transformation was becoming apparent to everyone observing Santos's shooting. Her 6th shot followed her 5th into the 10 ring. Then her 7th and 8th shots maintained the same level of precision. Each bullet impacted within inches of her previous shots, creating a tight group that demonstrated shooting ability far exceeding what her initial misses had suggested was possible. The soldiers behind the firing line had stopped their casual conversation and mockery, focusing instead on shooting that was approaching exceptional levels. The laughter and whispered comments had been replaced by intent observation and growing recognition that they were witnessing performance that exceeded normal qualification standards. Jesus Christ, whispered Sergeant Davis, one of the NCOs who had witnessed Santos's initial failures. Look at that shot group. She's hitting the same point of impact consistently. Santos's 9th shot maintained the precision of her previous attempts, striking the target's X ring for maximum points. Her 10th and final slow-fire shot completed a group that, despite the 2 initial misses, demonstrated marksmanship fundamentals that would have impressed experienced competitive shooters and was extraordinary for routine military qualification. Outstanding slow-fire recovery, Torres announced as Santos prepared for the transition to rapid-fire shooting. That's some of the most disciplined shooting I've observed during recent qualifications. The recognition felt different from sympathy or routine encouragement. Torres was acknowledging shooting performance that had exceeded realistic expectations and demonstrated capabilities that hadn't been apparent during Santos's training record. Her qualification attempt was evolving from expected failure to potential distinction among Alpha Company's better marksmen. Relay 1. Prepare for rapid-fire sequence, announced range control. You will have 40 seconds to fire 10 rounds. From the prone, supported position, begin firing when ready. Santos adjusted her position slightly for rapid-fire shooting, ensuring her magazine pouches were accessible for the reload she would need during the timed sequence. Her confidence from the slow-fire recovery carried over to rapid-fire preparation. Instead of anxiety about time pressure, Santos felt focused anticipation about demonstrating the shooting ability that her slow-fire string had revealed. The soldiers behind her had fallen completely silent, their attention fixed on whether she could maintain precision shooting under the additional stress of time constraints. Santos's performance had transformed from entertainment at her expense to genuine professional interest in exceptional marksmanship demonstration. Commence rapid fire, came the command. Santos's first rapid-fire shot broke immediately after the command, her preparation allowing her to begin shooting without hesitation or fumbling with equipment. Her shooting position remained stable and comfortable, the rifle supported by bone contact rather than muscle tension in ways that would allow accuracy maintenance throughout the rapid-fire sequence. Her shots developed a steady rhythm. Crack, crack, crack. Each round fired as soon as proper sight alignment was achieved rather than being rushed due to time pressure or delayed by overthinking. The time constraint that had caused problems during training seemed manageable now. Santos's confidence and technical proficiency combining to produce shooting that maintained her slow-fire precision under rapid-fire conditions. The observing soldiers had begun counting her shots aloud, their voices reflecting amazement at the consistency she was maintaining under rapid-fire pressure. That's 3, 4, 5. Each shot produced the distinctive sound of solid target hits, the electronic scoring system registering high scores with mechanical precision that couldn't be disputed or dismissed. At the halfway point, Santos executed a smooth magazine change, her movements automatic from countless repetitions during training exercises. She resumed firing without losing the shooting rhythm she'd established, her bullet placement remaining consistent despite time pressure and the physical stress of rapid-fire shooting under observation. 6, 7, 8. The counting continued behind her, soldiers who had mocked her initial misses now serving as witnesses to shooting that was approaching legendary status within Alpha Company's recent history. Santos's rapid-fire shots maintained the accuracy of her slow-fire performance despite additional challenges of time constraints and equipment manipulation. Santos's final rapid-fire shot broke with the same precision as her previous 9 attempts, completing a string that maintained exceptional accuracy despite the compressed time frame and pressure of public observation. Her shooting had evolved from public embarrassment to public spectacle, creating a narrative of recovery that would be retold throughout Fort Bragg for years to come. Ceasefire, Relay 1. Commanded range control. Weapons on safe, magazines removed. Prepare for score verification and tabulation. The electronic scoring system displayed preliminary results in real time, but final scores required verification by range personnel before becoming official qualification records. Santos remained in position while scorers confirmed her target impacts using high-powered spotting scopes. Her heart rate elevated from rapid-fire exertion, but her confidence high from the shooting performance she'd just demonstrated. The silence behind the firing line was complete now, 37 soldiers waiting for official confirmation of what they'd witnessed. Santos's shooting had transformed from anticipated failure to witnessed excellence, her recovery from 2 initial misses creating a demonstration that challenged everyone's assumptions about performance under pressure. Score verification complete, announced the chief range officer, his voice carrying a note of disbelief as he consulted his official scorecard. Santos, Maria, total score 248 out of 250 possible points. That establishes a new company record for individual marksmanship qualification. The announcement created a moment of absolute silence that seemed to stretch beyond normal time. Soldiers who had been expecting continued poor performance found themselves witnessing record-setting shooting that exceeded anything in Alpha Company's documented qualification history. Santos's score didn't just represent successful qualification. It established a standard of excellence that might never be equaled by future qualification attempts. Sergeant First Class Torres stood motionless behind the firing line, his expression reflecting the complete reassessment that Santos's performance had necessitated. In 12 years of supervising qualification shoots, he'd never witnessed such a dramatic transformation from failure to record-setting excellence, or such exceptional shooting under the pressure of public scrutiny and initial failure. Outstanding shooting, Santos, Torres finally managed, his voice carrying genuine amazement rather than routine professional acknowledgement. That's the finest marksmanship I've had the privilege to observe during my entire military career. The soldiers behind the firing line began reacting to what they'd witnessed, their initial stunned silence giving way to recognition of achievement that transcended normal qualification standards. Applause began tentatively among a few soldiers, then built to sustained recognition of exceptional performance that exceeded their own capabilities and expectations. "Unfucking believable," said Specialist Martinez, his voice carrying the respect that extraordinary achievement commanded regardless of other considerations. "I've never seen anyone recover from a complete disaster like that, especially to set a company record." Private Johnson, whose earlier comments had questioned Santos's military competence, approached her as she cleared her weapon and prepared to leave the firing line. His manner reflected the combination of amazement and respect that her shooting had earned through undeniable demonstration of exceptional capability. "Santos," Johnson said, extending his hand in acknowledgement, "I owe you a serious apology. I made assumptions about your shooting ability based on a rough start rather than giving you a chance to demonstrate what you could actually accomplish." Santos accepted his handshake, understanding that her shooting performance had transformed not just her own reputation within the company, but the perceptions of soldiers who had witnessed her recovery from initial failure to record-setting achievement. "Everyone has difficult moments," Santos replied diplomatically. "What matters most is how we respond when things don't go according to our plans." Her response reflected hard-earned understanding gained through the morning's shooting experience. That momentary failure didn't define ultimate capability, and that exceptional performance often emerged from overcoming adversity rather than avoiding challenging circumstances entirely. As subsequent relays of soldiers completed their own qualification attempts throughout the remainder of the morning, Santos's score remained untouchable at the top of the company's performance rankings. Her record of 248 out of 250 became the standard against which all other shooters measured their efforts, with several soldiers approaching her for advice about shooting techniques and mental preparation strategies. "Santos," said Corporal Williams after completing a respectable but unremarkable qualification attempt, "could you explain how you managed to recover from those first two complete misses? I've never seen anyone turn things around so dramatically." The request represented peer recognition that Santos had never experienced during her military service, acknowledgement that her performance had demonstrated capabilities worth learning from rather than simply admiring from a distance. More importantly, it suggested that her shooting had established credibility extending beyond marksmanship to leadership and instruction potential. "Certainly," Santos replied, settling beside Williams to discuss the mental techniques she'd employed to refocus after initial failures. "The most important thing to understand is that early mistakes don't determine your ultimate potential. Each shot is completely independent. What happened before doesn't control what happens next if you don't allow it to." The informal coaching session that followed demonstrated Santos's ability to communicate the psychological aspects of competitive shooting clearly and effectively, sharing insights that went beyond technical marksmanship to address mental challenges that affected performance under pressure and public observation. "That makes perfect sense when you explain it that way," Williams said after Santos described her approach to managing anxiety while maintaining focus despite external pressure and internal doubt. "You should be teaching this material in formal instruction settings." The suggestion opened possibilities that Santos hadn't considered since completing her initial military training. Her shooting performance had revealed not just exceptional marksmanship ability, but teaching capabilities that could benefit other soldiers struggling with similar performance challenges under pressure. Sergeant First Class Torres had been observing Santos's informal instruction with growing professional interest, noting her ability to explain complex psychological concepts in ways that struggling soldiers could understand and immediately apply to their own shooting challenges. "Santos," Torres said as the qualification session concluded and soldiers began cleaning equipment, "I want you to prepare a presentation on mental preparation and recovery techniques for next week's company training meeting. Focus specifically on the kind of psychological resilience you demonstrated during today's shooting." The assignment represented official recognition of Santos's shooting achievement and provided an opportunity to share her experience with other soldiers who might benefit from understanding how to overcome initial setbacks and perform effectively under pressure and public scrutiny. "Roger, Sergeant," Santos replied, her voice carrying confidence that had been built through her morning's performance and the recognition it had earned. "What specific topics would you like me to address in the presentation?" "Focus on mental preparation, anxiety management, and recovery from early mistakes," Torres instructed. "Also include equipment preparation and fundamental marksmanship techniques. And Santos, I'm also recommending you for the post-marksmanship team. Based on today's performance, you could represent Fort Bragg in regional and national competitions." The opportunity represented validation of Santos's exceptional shooting ability and recognition that her marksmanship could contribute to Army competitive programs while advancing her own military career in specialized directions that emphasized her demonstrated strengths. Over the following weeks, Santos's record-setting qualification became part of Fort Bragg folklore, retold not merely as an inspiring story, but as practical demonstration that exceptional performance could emerge from moments of apparent complete failure. Her score of 248 remained unbroken throughout the remainder of the training year, establishing a standard that challenged every subsequent qualifier while proving that true marksmanship ability often revealed itself under pressure rather than during comfortable practice conditions. More significantly, Santos's experience had demonstrated principles about mental resilience and recovery that influenced how soldiers throughout Alpha Company approach challenges in their military service. Her transformation from failing shooter to record holder in the span of 20 shots proved that momentary setbacks didn't define ultimate potential, and that the most important performance often occurred after initial failures rather than despite them. Years later, as Staff Sergeant Santos trained new soldiers in advanced marksmanship techniques, she would use her own qualification story to demonstrate that early struggles often preceded rather than prevented exceptional achievement. Her company record had become part of Army marksmanship training lore, but more significantly, it had established understanding that true capability revealed itself through response to adversity rather than through perfect initial performance under ideal conditions. The firing line where she had set her record remained a place of particular significance at Fort Bragg, representing the location where determination and technical skill had combined to overcome public ridicule and personal doubt. The target she had engaged with 20 shots, 2 complete misses followed by 18 exceptional hits, served as a permanent reminder that extraordinary achievement often began with ordinary failure, and that champions were distinguished not by avoiding mistakes, but by their response when mistakes inevitably occurred. Santos's story continued to influence Army marksmanship training decades after her record-setting performance, demonstrating that exceptional shooting required mental strength equal to technical ability, and that the soldiers who ultimately succeeded were often those who learned to perform their best shooting after their worst shots rather than depending on consistent excellence from the very beginning of their attempts. The transformation that had begun with 2 catastrophic misses during qualification established principles about resilience and recovery that would shape Santos's approach to every subsequent challenge in her military career. Her record score of 248 out of 250 remained unbroken for over 2 years, serving as both personal achievement and institutional reminder that exceptional performance often emerged from moments of apparent complete failure. During her assignment to the Fort Bragg marksmanship team, Santos encountered other soldiers whose experiences paralleled her own journey from struggling shooter to competitive marksman. Each interaction reinforced her understanding that technical competence alone wasn't sufficient for consistent success. Mental resilience and the ability to recover from setbacks proved equally crucial for maintaining high-level performance under various conditions. Private First Class Jackson, a recent addition to the marksmanship team, struggled with competitive anxiety despite demonstrating excellent shooting ability during practice sessions. His performance would deteriorate dramatically whenever scores were officially recorded or other soldiers observed his shooting, creating a destructive pattern that threatened his continued assignment to the specialized unit. Sergeant Santos, Jackson said after another disappointing qualification attempt that fell far short of his practice capabilities, "I can shoot expert scores consistently during training, but as soon as it matters for record, everything falls apart completely. How do you manage the pressure of performance when people are watching?" Santos recognized the same anxiety that had affected her own shooting before her record-setting qualification, the self-defeating cycle where fear of failure became a self-fulfilling prophecy that prevented demonstration of actual capabilities. "Jackson, tell me about your absolute worst shooting experience," Santos said, settling beside him on the concrete bench behind the firing line. "The day when everything went completely wrong and you thought you'd never be able to shoot competently again." Jackson described a qualification attempt during advanced individual training where he'd missed his first 7 shots consecutively, earning 0 points and effectively eliminating any possibility of achieving even minimum passing scores. The experience had been so humiliating that he'd seriously considered requesting transfer to avoid similar public failure in future qualification attempts. "What did you do after those 7 consecutive misses?" Santos asked, her tone carrying genuine interest rather than judgment about his struggles. "I wanted to walk away from the firing line," Jackson admitted honestly, "but I had 13 shots remaining, so I figured I might as well finish the string rather than quit completely. I managed to achieve decent scores on the remaining shots, but it was too late to achieve overall qualification." "How did those final 13 shots feel compared to the first 7 that you missed?" Jackson considered her question carefully, his expression reflecting growing understanding. Actually, they felt much better. More relaxed, I suppose, because the pressure was completely gone. I had nothing left to lose, so I just focused on executing proper fundamentals rather than worrying about the final score. Exactly, Santos said, nodding with recognition. You discovered something crucial that day, that your best shooting happened when you stopped focusing on outcomes and started concentrating on process. The pressure you felt during those first 7 shots was interfering with your ability to execute techniques you'd already mastered during training. Their conversation continued for nearly an hour, covering psychological strategies for managing competitive anxiety, technical approaches to maintaining consistency under pressure, and mental preparation techniques that Santos had developed through her own experience with performance challenges. The key insight, Santos explained, is understanding that every shot exists independently. Your previous misses don't control your next shot unless you allow them to. Each trigger pull is a fresh opportunity to demonstrate your actual capabilities. Jackson implemented Santos's suggestions during his next qualification attempt, achieving a score that reflected his practice capabilities rather than his anxiety-impaired performance. His improvement validated the psychological principles that Santos had learned through her own recovery from initial failure. That made all the difference, Jackson told Santos after completing a successful qualification. Instead of dwelling on early mistakes, I treated each shot as completely separate from what had happened before. My shooting felt natural rather than forced. Santos's informal coaching had evolved into recognized expertise within the marksmanship team, with team leaders regularly assigning her to work with soldiers struggling with performance anxiety or recovery from shooting difficulties. Her approach emphasized practical psychology rather than complex theory, focusing on techniques that could be immediately applied during actual shooting rather than requiring extensive additional training. Sergeant First Class Torres, now serving as the battalion marksmanship coordinator, had been documenting Santos's coaching methods for potential inclusion in formal Army training programs. Her techniques had proven effective with multiple soldiers facing various types of shooting challenges, suggesting broader applicability beyond individual cases. Santos, Torres said during one of their regular coordination meetings, I want you to develop a comprehensive training program on psychological aspects of marksmanship. Focus on the recovery techniques you've been using with struggling shooters, but structure it for formal classroom instruction. The assignment represented official recognition of Santos's coaching abilities and an opportunity to influence Army marksmanship training beyond her immediate unit. Her methods were being considered for implementation throughout the installation and potentially at other Army facilities facing similar challenges with shooter development. Roger, Sergeant, Santos replied, understanding the significance of the opportunity. What scope would you like me to address? Individual coaching techniques, group instruction methods, or both approaches? Both, Torres said definitively. I want a program that can help individual soldiers overcome specific problems, but also classroom instruction that can benefit entire units during regular training cycles. The curriculum development project that followed required Santos to systematize the intuitive coaching approaches she'd developed through personal experience and informal mentoring. Her program emphasized practical techniques that soldiers could implement immediately rather than theoretical concepts requiring extensive additional study. The pilot implementation of Santos's psychological marksmanship program took place with Charlie Company, a unit that had been experiencing below-average qualification scores and high failure rates during recent training cycles. The soldiers' technical skills were adequate, but many struggled with performance anxiety and recovery from early mistakes during qualification attempts. The most important concept to understand, Santos told the assembled company during her initial presentation, is that marksmanship is as much mental discipline as physical skill. Your ability to manage anxiety, recover from mistakes, and maintain focus under pressure often determines your performance more than pure shooting technique. Her presentation included practical exercises that soldiers could use to develop mental resilience, breathing techniques for anxiety management, and systematic approaches to shot analysis that prevented early mistakes from affecting subsequent performance. The training emphasized immediate applicability rather than complex psychological theory. Sergeant Santos, asked Private Williams after her presentation, what do you do when you feel that flinch starting to happen? How do you prevent it from affecting your shot? The question led to a detailed discussion of anticipation management, trigger control techniques, and mental preparation strategies that Santos had developed through her own experience with shooting challenges. Her responses demonstrated deep understanding of both technical and psychological aspects of marksmanship performance. The results of Charlie Company's next qualification cycle validated Santos's training approach. Their overall scores improved by an average of 15 points per soldier, with particularly dramatic improvements among soldiers who had previously struggled with performance anxiety and recovery from early mistakes during qualification attempts. Outstanding results, Torres noted during his assessment of the pilot program. Charlie Company achieved their highest collective qualification scores in over 2 years. I want you to prepare this program for implementation throughout the brigade. The success of Santos's psychological marksmanship training led to invitations to present her methods at the Army Marksmanship Training Conference, where instructors from installations worldwide gathered to share innovative training techniques and best practices for shooter development. Her presentation to the conference audience emphasized the practical applications that had proven effective with struggling soldiers, avoiding academic psychological theory in favor of techniques that could be immediately implemented by units with limited specialized training resources. The foundation of effective marksmanship instruction, Santos told her audience, of experienced trainers, is understanding that shooting problems are often mental rather than technical. Soldiers who miss targets frequently possess adequate technical skills but struggle with anxiety, anticipation, or recovery from mistakes. Her presentation included case studies from her work with various soldiers, demonstrating how psychological coaching had resolved shooting problems that hadn't responded to additional technical instruction. The examples showed measurable improvements in qualification scores and shooter confidence across multiple units and soldier backgrounds. Following the conference, Santos received requests from installations throughout the Army to conduct similar training programs, establishing her reputation as a subject matter expert in psychological aspects of military marksmanship. Her methods were being adopted by training units that had experienced limited success with conventional technical instruction approaches. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, the Army Marksmanship Unit's senior instructor, approached Santos after her conference presentation with an opportunity that would significantly expand her influence on military shooting programs. Sergeant Santos, Rodriguez said, I'd like to offer you an assignment with the Army Marksmanship Unit. We need someone with your background in psychological coaching to develop training programs for our competitive shooters and to work with struggling soldiers from units worldwide. The assignment represented validation of Santos's expertise and an opportunity to influence Army marksmanship training at the highest levels. The Army Marksmanship Unit trained the service's elite competitive shooters and provided specialized instruction to units experiencing particular challenges with marksmanship programs. I'm very interested, Master Sergeant, Santos replied, understanding the career significance of the opportunity. What would my specific responsibilities include? Primarily coaching competitive shooters who are struggling with performance anxiety, developing training programs for units with below-average qualification rates, and conducting research on psychological factors affecting military marksmanship, Rodriguez explained. It's specialized duty that would utilize your unique combination of competitive shooting ability and coaching expertise. Santos's acceptance of the Army Marksmanship Unit assignment marked a significant transition in her military career, moving from conventional unit service to specialized duty that emphasized her demonstrated strengths in both shooting and instruction. Her new responsibilities included working with the Army's premier competitive marksmen while developing training materials for broader military use. Her first major project involved working with Staff Sergeant Peterson, a member of the Army's International Competitive Shooting Team who had been experiencing performance difficulties during major competitions despite maintaining excellent scores during practice sessions. Sergeant Santos, Peterson explained during their initial consultation, I can shoot perfect scores consistently during training, but something happens during competitions that causes my performance to deteriorate. It's affecting my ability to represent the Army effectively in international matches. Santos recognized the performance anxiety pattern that she'd encountered with multiple soldiers. Though Peterson's case was complicated by the extremely high standards required for international competitive shooting and the pressure of representing the entire Army in worldwide competitions. "Tell me about your most recent competition experience," Santos requested. "Walk me through exactly what you were thinking and feeling during the match." Peterson described feeling increasingly tense as the competition progressed, with early shots that were slightly off-center creating anxiety that affected his subsequent shooting. His technical skills remained intact, but mental pressure had prevented him from demonstrating his actual capabilities during the competition. "The problem isn't your shooting ability," Santos observed after analyzing Peterson's description. "The issue is that you're treating each shot as cumulative rather than independent. Early shots that aren't perfect are creating pressure that affects your remaining shots." Their work together involved developing mental preparation routines that Peterson could use during competitions, techniques for managing anxiety between shots, and strategies for maintaining focus despite the pressure of international competition and media attention. The results became apparent during Peterson's next international competition, where he achieved scores that reflected his practice capabilities rather than his previous competition difficulties. His performance helped the Army team achieve their best international ranking in several years. "Your coaching made the difference," Peterson told Santos after the competition. "I was able to maintain the same mental approach throughout the entire match rather than letting early shots affect my later performance." Santos's success with competitive shooters led to additional assignments working with Army marksmen preparing for Olympic trials, international military competitions, and specialized tactical shooting requirements. Each case reinforced her understanding that elite marksmanship required psychological skills equal to technical abilities. Her coaching methods were systematically documented and incorporated into Army marksmanship unit training programs, ensuring that her techniques would be available to future generations of military competitive shooters. The psychological training materials she developed became standard components of advanced marksmanship instruction throughout the Army. "Sergeant Santos," said Colonel Williams, the Army Marksmanship Unit commander, during her annual evaluation, "your contributions to competitive shooting and marksmanship training have exceeded every expectation. You've developed training methods that are being adopted throughout the military." The recognition reflected Santos's evolution from a soldier who had struggled with initial qualification failures to someone whose expertise was shaping Army marksmanship training at the highest levels. Her record-setting qualification score had been just the beginning of contributions that extended far beyond individual achievement. As Santos prepared for promotion to staff sergeant and potential assignment as a senior marksmanship instructor, she reflected on the trajectory that had begun with 2 catastrophic misses during a routine qualification. Her decision to continue shooting despite initial failure and public ridicule had revealed capabilities that changed not just her own career, but Army approaches to marksmanship training and competitor development. The laughter that had followed her early misses remained a source of personal embarrassment, but it was now balanced by achievements that had established her reputation as one of the Army's premier marksmanship experts. Her qualification record still stood as Fort Bragg's highest individual score, inspiring soldiers while establishing standards for shooting excellence. More importantly, Santos had learned that momentary failure didn't define long-term potential, and that exceptional performance could emerge from difficult circumstances when combined with proper mental preparation and determination to continue despite initial setbacks. Her journey from struggling qualifier to recognized expert demonstrated that true capability often remained hidden until circumstances provided opportunities for demonstration. The firing line where she had set her record remained a place of special significance at Fort Bragg, representing the moment when her mental resilience became visible and her value to Army marksmanship became undeniable. The target she had engaged with 20 shots, 2 complete misses followed by 18 exceptional hits, served as a permanent reminder that extraordinary achievement could follow devastating beginnings when persistence combined with proper preparation and mental discipline. Years later, as Sergeant First Class Santos trained Army competitive shooters and developed marksmanship programs for installations worldwide, she would continue using her own qualification story to demonstrate that early struggles often preceded rather than prevented exceptional achievement. Her record score had become part of Army marksmanship legend, but more significantly, it had established principles about mental resilience and recovery that influenced how she approached both her own challenges and the development of soldiers under her instruction. The rifle that had fired those record-setting shots remained with her throughout her career, serving as both practical tool and symbolic reminder that exceptional performance often began with moments of apparent complete failure, and that true marksmanship, like true character, was measured not by perfect beginnings, but by the ability to recover, adapt, and excel when initial attempts fell far short of expectations and public ridicule threatened to undermine confidence entirely. Santos's influence on Army marksmanship training extended beyond her direct coaching to encompass research on psychological factors affecting military shooting performance. Her methods were studied by military psychologists and incorporated into training programs throughout the Department of Defense, ensuring that lessons learned from her experience would benefit future generations of military marksmen facing similar challenges with performance anxiety and recovery from initial failures.